I'm Hallie Jackson in Washington, and you have been listening to those historic proceedings from the Supreme Court, just steps from where we're sitting. The justices hearing arguments in former President Donald Trump's claim that he should be immune from criminal charges for acts committed while in office. And while the court is considering, in the words of one justice, a ruling for the ages for all presidents, there will be more immediate implications for Mr. Trump. Now, there's clearly some skepticism in that questioning you just heard that Mr. Trump should enjoy absolute immunity. But it is much less clear what the court will do from here. With some signals, they may not ultimately issue a definitive ruling. And if that's the case, it could delay the start of Mr. Trump's federal trial. You heard the justices really drilling down on what actions are private versus official. So in other words, whether a president's acting in his private capacity or in his official one. So now the biggest questions that the oral arguments are over will be, what are the justices going to decide? And critically, when will they decide it? The clock, remember, is ticking down as the prosecutors who have charged the former president are looking to get their cases tried before the election in November. I want to get right to NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos, who has been listening and watching along with us. And Danny, let me start with you. There seemed to be some agreement here as we talk about this distinction between private and official, that private acts are prosecutable. The question is official acts, certain official acts, whether those would be or not. There's a lot of gray area on that front, and you heard a lot of questioning from the justices on that issue.
There appear to be some concessions. On the Trump side, there's a concession that private conduct, as opposed to official conduct, would be prosecutable. And then, of course, on the Jack Smith side, there appears to be a concession, although it's nuanced, that if it's something that falls within Article 2 core powers, like the veto, like giving a pardon, those may be absolutely immune, although they're very careful not to use the word absolutely immune and careful not to use the word immune, instead saying it might fall within a public authority defense. So you have concessions on both sides. Also notable is that Trump's side appears to concede that at least some of the conduct alleged in the indictment was private conduct. That becomes very interesting, and that may lead to a remand back to the district court to determine what was official conduct and what was private conduct, which, if nothing else, achieves a side issue, a benefit to the president, former president, which is delaying the case somewhat further.
And Yamiche, talk about that piece of it, right? Because the justices very much left open that possibility. You heard even Justice Kavanaugh and others ask specifically about that question. If it were to be remanded or sent back down to a lower court here, that affects the timeline. So for Mr. Trump, who's obviously hoping not to have this federal case happen before the November election, that could be at least a partial victory.
That could be a partial victory. We know that former President Donald Trump has tried to delay every single legal problem that he's been facing, specifically this one, of course. And he has really been trying to make sure that this maybe even happens after the November election. It's part of his rebuttal to all of these cases. He's been saying that Democrats are trying to stop him from being elected. So it would be a victory for him if that happened. It was also interesting to hear a number of the justices, including Ketanji Brown Jackson, though, say in an ordinary case, even if parts of the case might not be something that he would be convicted on or even be something that would be part of this immunity case, that it would still go forward. So she was really making the case here that even if parts of this case aren't going to be things that Donald Trump ultimately will face judgment on, that the case in some ways should go forward. That's the vibe that I got from her. I also just want to say, listening to these arguments, you really got a sense of the history and the stakes here. Yeah. I wrote it down time and time again. You had Neil Gorsuch say we're writing for the ages, right? You had Samuel Alito, who was really skeptical in a lot of ways of the idea that the government, the arguments that the government was making here, sort of leaning toward the arguments that the Trump lawyer was making. He felt like the most sympathetic to the Trump case. He said, though, the case will have effects that go far beyond this particular prosecution. And I also want to say I started this morning talking about the world impact of this case. And of course, as American journalists, as Americans, we're looking and saying our presidency is going to be defined by what the Supreme Court does here. But over and over again, we talked about the world impact in this case. You had Ketanji Brown Jackson saying that the president isn't just the most powerful person in the country, he's the most powerful person in the world. Yeah. And she talked about how it could be really problematic and even catastrophic if he just is able to do whatever he wants to do. I also think in part, you talked about the bribes, and there were a lot of questions about sort of the conduct of the presidency. They again went back to world impact. Not just bribing, but bribing because of an ambassador that you might put out in the world. Not just assassinating, using SEAL Team 6, who of course assassinated Osama bin Laden. Could the president use SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political opponent? I also think even Alito, going back to someone who was sympathetic to the Trump side, he talked about the idea that we don't want to be a country where political opponents go after the presidency if they retire. So I also just think that the world impact here and the stakes here were just so clear every single time the justices were talking here.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.